why did you sell all your solid state logic fusion processors? And the honest answer would be that they are brilliant when you are starting a chain. They are exceptional tools for basically if I always say this, I always recommend the SSL Fusion for one purpose, and that is it's got a little bit of everything, and it's got the mid-side insert point. So there's no other kind of unit out there that gives you a little bit of everything and a mid-side insert for that sort of money. I think they're about £1,500–1,600, which is really, really cheap for what is essentially, even if you weren't to use any of the other stuff, a mid-side decoder and encoder. I use, and this is what I've swapped it for, the SPL Gemini, which is basically a kind of mid-side insert with a kind of more of a stereo image tailor, I guess. It's like a, add more mids, add more sides, does all that stuff. The thing with the Fusion, and this is why I've sold it, is because once you start adding multiple pieces of equipment, the Fusion just sits there and goes, are you ever going to play with me? Because the vintage drive on it is rubbish. That will always get replaced. For me, it got replaced with the black box. The high and low shelves just never got used, because there's probably 8 EQs in this chain with high and low shelves. That's not to say they're not good. They just never got a look in against a high-end EQ. The high frequency compressor, it's all right. I mean, it sounds good. And the stereo imager, it's all right. This is the thing with the Fusion, is all these little things, they're all right. But if you're going to buy, if you've got one thing that does what the vintage drive is, it's going to be better. One EQ that does what the Violet EQ does, it's going to be better. So for me, it got to a point with the Fusion where it wasn't getting used, and the only thing it was getting used for was the mid-side insert point, which, don't get me wrong, that can't be faulted. That's incredibly good, and I think it's very, very reasonably priced because it has that in it, and you won't find one cheaper, really, or not that I know of. So if you get to the point, you will get to the point, look, here's the thing with the Fusion, is you'll just get to the point where you'll outgrow it, and you'll have an EQ that will just make the EQ in the Fusion surplus to requirements. Same with the stereo field, like the stereo widener, the Portico 2, that just made it redundant. And then I got to a point where I looked at the Fusion and I just was like, you're not doing anything anymore. So what I did was I swapped it for the Gemini, which, the Gemini don't bring a massive amount extra to the chain. It just gives me something that is constantly used. Whereas the Fusion I was at a point where I didn't ever touch it. And I almost found myself kind of going, right, well, I kind of got to use you at some point. I'll add a little bit of EQ with you. And it was just like, I could have done that elsewhere. But it was like, I've got you, I'll try and use you a bit more. Stereo widener, it's not as good as that. No, I'll turn it off and I'll use that. So it come to a point where in both Mastering Studio A and Mastering Studio B, we basically went, right, okay, let's, we've outgrown the SSL Fusion. Now, this is not to say that the SSL Fusion isn't good, and it is. When people ask me, where building a mastering chain, where should I start? SSL Fusion. All day long. SSL Fusion, the first thing you buy, put that in, build off of that. Right? When you start replacing all the parts that are in the SSL Fusion, and you know, the EQ doesn't get used anymore because you've got a high-end EQ. Once everything's all been replaced, then by all means take the SSL Fusion out. They fetch a good value, 13.25 I think you can get for them now. You'll sell it for that all day long. So, you know, even if after 3 years you decide, you know what, I've outgrown the SSL Fusion, let's sell it, you'll still get like £1,300 for it. Which, what, £300 less than what you paid for it, and you've had it for 3 years. It's very, very good. And the thing with the Fusions is they hold their value. They really do hold their value, and they're a highly sought after a piece of equipment. Mainly because people like me, you know, we recommend them because they're good. They're great to start a chain with. If you're starting a mastering chain, SSL Fusion, build from there, grow. You know, SSL Fusion, you've got a little bit of everything, right? It's almost like you've just got this small amount that's not great. It's not great. They're not great pieces in each of them. It's not like, wow, this thing sounds incredible. You know, to some people it will, but once you start replacing it with certain things, you'll be like, it won't get a look in. And that's the honest review that you won't probably hear of many people on YouTube. But that is the honest review of an SSL Fusion. Like me, one day you'll outgrow it. Right? That's if you're a master engineer. If you're a mix engineer, for instance, and you're using it in mixed chains, you'll throw it on loads of stuff. It can go on drums. Throw it on a drum bus with a G bus compressor on the insert. It's incredible. You know, it's going to stay with you for a long